I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm Sir Peppy, and welcome to Room A7.
History flames into life as the dramatic scenes of the first landing at Circular Quay are reenacted at Palm Cove. In the shadow of a modern city, a replica of His Majesty's ship Supply rides at anchor, where the real Supply was hove to on January the 26th, 1788. We see the natives gathering in corroboree to ward off the invaders, just as they then did.
These Aboriginal people that you see here in the reenactment of the 150th anniversary of the First Fleet landing were actually forced to do this performance according to the National Museum of Australia.
Before Captain Phillip lands, Lieutenant Ball takes a boatload of Marines ashore to keep the natives in check. In the face of menacing savages, the white men advance up the shore of the new land.
The site reads, 26 January 1938. One of the events organised for the sesquicentenary was a reenactment of the landing of Captain Arthur Phillip. Aboriginal people living in Sydney refused to take part, so the organisers brought in men from Menindee in western New South Wales and kept them locked up at the Redfern Police Barracks stables until the reenactment took place. On the day itself, they were made to run up the beach away from the British, an inaccurate version of events.
England is hoisted again where it first flew in Australia, this time watched by thousands of Australian-born citizens of the Empire.
The Aborigines taking part in this reenactment were press-ganged into playing roles. They were brought to Sydney and held overnight in a police compound next to dog kennels, and they were warned that if they didn't cooperate, their food rations would be stopped. In 1988, it will be the 200th anniversary of the British in Australia. Who will play the menacing savages has yet to be decided.
When I returned to the National Library of Australia, I was reminded of a 1985 report made by John Pilger called The Secret Country. In it, he describes a country that no longer wants to face the realities that we have inflicted on our first people. That was over 32 years ago, and not much, I feel, has changed.
So you see, there have never been treaties here because we didn't exist legally to sign a treaty with them.
Mr. Abbott, today's also the 40th anniversary of the Tent Embassy in Canberra. Do you think it's still relevant or should it move?
Look, I can understand why the Tent Embassy was established all those years ago. I think a lot has changed for the better since then. We had the historic apology just a few years ago, one of the genuine achievements of Kevin Rudd as Prime Minister. We had the proposal, which is currently for national consideration, to recognise Indigenous people in the Constitution. I think the Indigenous people of Australia can be very proud of the respect in which they are held by every Australian, and yes, I think a lot's changed since then, and I think it probably is time to move on from that.
The Aborigines were deemed to be subhuman, little more than animals, which was to justify not only the theft of their land, but their extermination. An edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, still in circulation when I was at school, described them as only an animal of prey, more ferocious than the leopard or the hyena. He devours his own species. So they were hunted and raped and massacred. And few doubted at the time that genocide was official policy. A government report in the 1850s spoke of the success of poisoning Aborigines, 100 of them laid out at a time. But until quite recently, little of this was even acknowledged. In Tasmania, the Aborigines were said to have died out. In fact, they were hunted along with kangaroos and almost wiped out. In New South Wales, by 1845, the tribe who had watched Captain Cook sail here into Botany Bay was reduced to 3 women and a man. One of the most enduring myths about the Aborigines is that they did not fight back. In fact, a war of resistance lasted more than a century, some of it here on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, north of Sydney. And when the British established the town of Windsor in the early 1800s, a great war began. This war was not recorded in the Imperial Chronicles of Australia. Growing up here, I knew nothing about it, And I suspect that's still true of the people in the smart beach houses here today. And yet the Durag inflicted on the British a casualty rate greater than that sustained by the Australian Armed Forces during all of World War II. And finally, after 22 years, outnumbered and without guns, they went down fighting to the last man, woman and child, a complete nation. Today, in a land of many cenotaphs and war memorials on which invariably is written, "Lest we forget," not one of them stands for those who fought and fell in their own country.
When I found the book and I opened it for the first time, it was amazing to me that the document was almost 100 years old. There are only 3 of these books in the entire world, and it illustrates the philosophy of A.O. Neville and his actions as Chief Protector of Aborigines in Western Australia. I spent almost 3 hours in the library reading as much of the book as possible. It was a horrifying read. What was astonishing was how much this monster of a man truly believed in his work. His book read like a dystopian future novel, where he believed his actions was for the good of humanity. In his writing, he believed that the black race was slowly going extinct. He believed that by saving the half-caste children, he could absorb their race into the white race, breeding out the Aboriginal race. He believed in his work so fully, he was able to convince the churches, nuns, politicians, and the general community that this was the humane thing to do. The belief that white genes and European culture was going to save the black race. I'm Sir Peppy, and this was Room A7.